Mina looked down at her hands. She would touch the body, and Newberry hadn't brought her serviceable wool gloves to exchange for her white evening gloves. They were only satin. Neither her mother's tinkering nor her own salary could afford kid, but they were still too dear to ruin. She tugged at the tips of her fingers, but the fastenings at her wrists prevented them from sliding off. Futilely she tried to push the small buttons through equally small satin loops. The seams at the tips of her fingers made them too bulky, and the fabric was too slippery. She looked round for Newberry and saw that the black powder from the Faro-type camera already dusted his hands. Blast it! She would bite them through if she had to. Even the despised task of sewing the buttons back on would be easier than, "Give your hand over, Inspector." Mina's hackles rose at the command. As she looked up into Treherne's face and heard a noise from his companion, a snorted half-laugh, as if Treherne had failed an easy test. The Duke's expression didn't soften, though his words did. "You'll finish more quickly if I assist you. Will you allow me?" No, she thought. Don't touch me. Do not come close. But the body on the steps would not allow her that reply. Yes, thank you. She held out her hand and watched as he removed his own gloves. Kid lined with sable. Just imagining the luxurious softness warmed her. Mina wouldn't have been surprised if his present had as well. With his great size, Treherne seemed to surround her with heat just by standing so near. His hands were large, his fingers long and nails square. As he took her wrist in his left palm, calluses audibly scraped against the satin. His face darkened. She could not tell if it was in anger or embarrassment. However rough his skin was, his fingers were nimble. He deftly unfastened the first button and the next. "This is not the evening you had planned." "No." She did not say this was preferable to the Victory Ball, but perhaps he read it in her voice. To her surprise, his teeth flashed in a smile. Then his face quickly hardened again, as if his smile had surprised him as well. He bent his head over her hand again, and Mina found herself staring at his short eyelashes, so thick and black that his eyelids seemed lined with kohl. She looked away, but gold glinting through the thickness of his dark hair drew her gaze again. 3 tiny rings pierced the top curve of each ear. His earlobes had been pierced too, though he wore no jewelry in them. And so the new sheets had dressed him up. In a drawing, his thickly lashed eyes and jewelry would have appeared feminine, but not up close, not in person. Instead, the effect was primitive. Unsettled, she had focused on her wrist. Only 2 buttons left, and then she could work. She should be working now. Were the dogs patrolling the grounds before the body was discovered? No. They searched for the point of entry now. Mina pictured the iron fence. Perhaps a child could slip through the bars, a man could not. But if someone had let him through... "Have you spoken with your man at the front gate?" "Wills?" She had not asked the gatekeeper his name. If Wills has a prosthetic left leg and often saves a portion of his supper and his beard for his breakfast, then we are talking of the same man. That is Wills. He studied her with unreadable eyes. He wouldn't have let anyone through. Without my leave, Mina finished for him. And perhaps he was correct, though of course she could verify it with the gatekeeper and ask the housekeeper about deliveries. Someone might have hidden themselves in one. His gaze fell to her glove again. "There we are," Treherne said. "Now to—" She pulled her hand away at the same time Treherne gripped the satin fingertips. He tugged. Satin slid in a warm caress over her elbow, her forearm. Flames lit her cheeks. "Sir—" His expression changed as he continued to pull, first registering surprise as if he hadn't realized the glove extended past her wrist, then an emotion hard and sharp as the long glove slowly gave way. Its white length finally dangled from his fingers, and to Mina seemed as intimate as if he had held her stocking.